Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast Weekly Preview Edition. I am your host, Jon Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF, and back to join me once again, Kate, the great Magdziuk. Kate, welcome back, and how are you today?
I'm good. I'm fresh off a stint of jury duty, which forced me on the injury list, did not participate list last week, but I'm excited to be back. Unfortunately, I have to watch my Pittsburgh Steelers tonight in prime time. So for anybody listening after the game, just send me your thoughts and prayers, because I'm sure it's going to go pretty poorly.
Yeah. The question is, would you rather do jury duty or watch the Steelers in prime time? I guess
probably jury duty. And I'm not
Wow.
I'm not playing right now. Like jury duty, at least I know I'm doing my civic duty and showing up to traffic court. Not the most exciting civic duty, but you know what? Like that's fine. We're going to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tennessee Titans tonight. And, unfortunately, we've got some like big fantasy assets on buys this week. So we're going to have to help our good audience find some, maybe deeper plays and really get our crew through this following week, because these are the make or break weeks at this point. Don't give up, don't catch your league mates off guard with some of these plays here, because this is like the prime time for your fantasy football teams. We got to make those playoffs, baby.
Yeah, this is definitely crunch time now here, especially with all the bye weeks coming in. And yeah, we're going to go through it all. We're going to go game by game again, and we're going to hit on those key players and matchups throughout. I'll be sure to include the timestamps and put those in the episode description as well. But like you said, Kate, we have 4 teams on a bye this week: Jacksonville, Denver, San Francisco, and Detroit. So 14 games to go through instead of our regular 16, but I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, I do want to give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Life. Fall is all about the back to school and back to routine checklist, and the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy, MEET fabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, Kate, let's get into it. And like you said, we got Thursday night football tonight, and it is your Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Tennessee Titans. So where would you like to start with this one?
Should we just start with the home team, rip off the Band-Aid,
Sure.
Get it over with? Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who to this point in the season, obviously hugely disappointing on offense, but some good news on the injury front here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or I don't know, maybe bad news, depending on how much you like Kenny Pickett. They will have Kenny Pickett available in this matchup, was left off the injury report after sustaining a rib injury here in week 8. Oh my gosh, what day is it? They've got Deontay Johnson back. Obviously, Pat Freiermuth is still on the injured reserve, but still have these questions in the run game. And John, I'm being honest, like even in a week where there are some fantasy assets here that are out, we've got 4 teams on bye, I'm still looking at this backfield and wondering if these assets are startable here with Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren. Is there going to be, enough room to get the run going against this Titans defense that's already pretty decent against the run? And then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers who can't get the run going. So I think this is going to be a matchup where you're going to be hard pressed to find any sort of viability for either of these running backs, I think.
I'm with you 100%. It is so hard to trust them at this point, considering the usage and how kind of ineffective they've been, really. And again, going against the Titans, like you said, who have been a decent team against the run, I'd be surprised, like, to put them inside of, I guess, like top 20 running back to even top 24. I don't know if I love Najee Harris enough to even put him in top 24 this week in a short, like in a smaller week of options too. So he's probably right on the fringe for me, but it's close. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't feel great about it at all. It is nice that we're getting Kenny Pickett back for I guess for Deontay Johnson and for
Yes.
George Pickens, right? Because Mitchell Trubisky did not get the job done so much last week when he filled in. Nate actually had a good note in his start sit article this week about Deontay Johnson, who saw a 61.1% target rate in the first half of week 8 before Pickett got injured. And then that rate fell to 9.7% in the second half when Trubisky took over. So obviously 61%, we're not expecting that to be sustainable, but it is at least nice to know that Pickett is looking for Deontay Johnson. So that should help him. I like the matchup for George Pickens as well to an extent. He's been decent, 12th most fantasy points per route run against man coverage this season. The Titans have been above average in man coverage as well. So I like both Deontay Johnson and George Pickens this week. Not as crazy about like Kenny Pickett to as much or Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren.
No, I just don't see this being a scoring bonanza between either of these two teams. The thing about Kenny Pickett, he doesn't throw a ton of touchdowns. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't start his wide receivers, like especially in full PPR, half PPR scoring formats where you get those credits. Over the last 2 weeks, Deontay Johnson, despite the fact that coming back from a hamstring injury, even got banged up a little bit in week 8, left the game briefly, came back, like just doing Deontay Johnson things. Still has seen 18 targets from Kenny Pickett over the last 2 weeks, just from Kenny Pickett specifically. And that is something we cannot take away from Deontay Johnson. He's caught 11 of them, 141 passing yards from Kenny Pickett to Deontay Johnson. So even the fact that George Pickens has been, the guy while Johnson's been out with injury, clearly Pickett's going back to the well. I feel a little bit more comfortable with Johnson over Pickens, just in terms of maybe the floor. Obviously, the ceiling with Pickens super high because you never know when he's going to break off one of those plays. But generally speaking, it's Deontay Johnson, it's George Pickens, and these are the only two assets I'm starting, I think, in any of my leagues, even some dynasty leagues where I roster Najee Harris, and I'm digging a little bit deeper in my benches this week.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I'm with you there. And on the Titans side of things, we're getting Will Levis, who was getting his second start of the season. Looked promising last week, but it's a small sample size. The Steelers defense is getting Cam Hayward back this week. They won't be they won't have Minkah Fitzpatrick, so that at least helps attacking the secondary a little bit with guys like DeMonte Casey and Keanu Neal back there. So there's maybe some holes to take advantage of for Will Levis. Joey Porter has been great, but the rest of the corners there haven't been as good. So how do you feel about Will Levis being potentially like one of those streaming options, I guess, this week, as far as like filling in for some of these? There's a lot of injured quarterbacks and 4 quarterbacks on a bye. So you okay with Will Levis as a streaming quarterback, or you want to wait and see on him for a little bit more?
Surprisingly, I am. I don't think this is an ideal spot for Levis. I don't think he's going to come out and post 4 touchdowns. I think what you're probably looking at is probably something maybe like if things go well, like 220 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, I think would be a good day for Will Levis against this defense. We're gonna, I think, see him tested against pressure that he hasn't seen to date, which will be something interesting. The Titans missing one of their offensive linemen, so that could be, something to monitor here in terms of, we know the Steelers pass rush has been super effective between TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. There are a lot of variables, and then you add Cam Hayward back to the mix. So this could be something unlike things that Levis has seen to date. So I like him. The other thing about Will Levis is he's got some wheels on him, and he's got I think that's probably one of the more underrated aspects of his game is his ability to run the ball. He's a big guy and it almost kind of reminds me of like a Josh Allen type, the way he is able to gain yards with his legs and scramble. I like Will Levis. I have him ranked as my quarterback 14 this year. I'm not getting this week. I'm not getting too cute because I do think that this could be a matchup where we see him generate a couple of turnovers here. But again, like slim pickings this week, man, like between, the best of the best quarterbacks, they have delicious matchups. But when you're looking at some of the streamers, there's not a ton of great matchups to target this week. So Levis, I'm okay with.
Yeah. I think I'm with you there for sure. And as far as like his receiving options go, I mean, I'm not really trusting anybody outside of DeAndre Hopkins. I think that's the one that I feel okay about. Again, the Steelers defense, Superman heavy, but they have allowed some holes and some leaks in their coverage. 49.3 team coverage grade while in man, which is 29th in the league. They've allowed an 18.8 explosive play rate while in man coverage as well, which is the 6th worst mark in the league. DeAndre Hopkins has been the best wide receiver, obviously, for the Titans. So he'd be the one if you that could potentially help boost Will Levis a little bit this week. We saw that obviously last week. Not expecting 3 touchdowns from DeAndre Hopkins again necessarily, but at least, if you're looking to stream Will Levis, DeAndre Hopkins is somebody that can take advantage of this matchup and potentially help Will Levis a little bit. But that is pretty much, I mean, Derrick Henry too is somebody that you're playing pretty much no matter what. But that's it for Tennessee for me.
Yeah, I think that's about where it ends. If you want to get super cute in a DFS, maybe Tajay Spears. The Steelers haven't been great against the run, but like you can't. Spears would be a liability in any sort of long season leagues. Like where don't get too cute. Don't get too cute with this matchup. I think the last time I checked, the over under is sitting at around 36 points for this game. Nobody is expecting fireworks here. Like nobody. Not me.
Yeah, makes sense, especially on a short week here on Thursday night. These games are always strange, as we always say. So let's go on to a game where the over-under is going to be much higher, and we do expect some explosive plays, hopefully. Over in Germany, Miami is taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. So, man, where to start with this one? This is... let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs, I guess, right? Because Patrick Mahomes obviously had that really poor outing last week, right? He like 8 fantasy points or something like that. It was under 10. It was a terrible game. Obviously, he did have some kind of flu or illness or whatever that potentially affected his game. Any concern about Patrick Mahomes at all going forward? This feels like a one-off type thing here for Mahomes. I think this, for me anyways, this feels like a good bounce back week.
Yeah, I think this matchup should be perfectly suitable. And, I think, like, all things considered, it just felt like one of those weird weeks. And to be honest, like every single top contender in the league at this point has had at least one of those really weird weeks. Just the week prior, saw Kansas City come out, have an absolutely dominant, convincing win over the Chargers, posted as much offense as they had all season. The defense is playing super well. Like I have no concerns about the Chiefs. Very much do not have concerns about, Patrick Mahomes. I really think that every week it feels like we're seeing Rashee Rice get a little bit better and look a little bit more comfortable. Last week, finally led the team, the wide receiver core in Kansas City in terms of routes run. You love to see it. Finally, we're getting him some more reps. And he's not out there doing cardio. He's actually being targeted. So, I think you can continue to move forward with Rashee Rice as a weekly flex play at this point. How about the run game? Because the run game is kind of probably the most interesting question, I think, for me at this point, where the Chiefs have had some ups and downs from Isaiah Pacheco. Are they going to be able to establish the run here against this Miami Dolphins, team? Are they going to have time to do it? From a game script perspective, how do you see them being able to manage the run against an offense as potent as the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see, like, at least game script wise as well. But I feel decent about Pacheco. It's not the best matchup for him. I think you probably have to start him in most leagues, probably in that kind of RB2 range again. But Miami's been decent against the run. They got a pretty good defensive line there as far as, being able to run stop. The Chiefs haven't been amazing as far as their offensive line goes. So it's not the most optimal matchup for Isaiah Pacheco, but I think you're kind of banking on some volume there. And he is getting a little bit more work near the goal line as well. So maybe potentially gets involved there, because Kansas City can obviously get into scoring position. So there's always that chance. I think he's still a play for me this week, but not one that I'm like particularly excited about or anything like that. But the rest of them, like Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously those are the ones. I'm just not playing, but I feel okay about Pacheco.
I think that's totally fair. Now, on the Miami Dolphins side of the ball, like, is this the least complicated fantasy football lineup decision making of all time? Like, you start to, I know that the Kansas City Chiefs not been a stellar matchup defensively, but the Miami Dolphins, they should be good enough, right? Like this should be a high scoring game. They are efficient. You are starting all of your Miami Dolphins, and it's really quite simple at this point. You start Tyreek Hill, you start Jalen Waddle, you start Tua. What's your confidence level for a guy like Raheem Mostert headed into this week? Going up against this Chiefs defense, allowing the 25th most points to opposing running backs. So again, not really a favorable point. And if the points start rolling, can you trust Raheem Mostert? Like, I don't think you're at a point where you could sit him given the upside.
Yeah, no, I'm like, it's basically the same with all these Miami options, right? They've been so good that you really can't bench them, even if you don't love the matchup against Kansas City's defense, which has been good. And like you said, 25th most points to running backs, 26th most points to wide receivers, 30th most points to quarterbacks. But how do you sit Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill? You just don't do it, right? And I think the same thing with Raheem Mostert, because these guys are so explosive. It only really takes one play for them to kind of rip one off and have like a huge fantasy day because of it. So I'm definitely starting them all. I mean, even Jalen Waddle, I know he's been up and down this year, but he should still see enough volume to be worthy of that starting option, even in a tougher matchup. And he hasn't been like as productive against man coverages, which the Chiefs run a lot of this season. So, and they've been good at it too. So that would be the one where I'm probably tempering expectations a little more as Jalen Waddle, but he's not somebody that I'm benching because of it. Just, for DFS plays and things like that, you're probably avoiding them in that case. But season long, I don't think there's any way we could bench them, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I'd feel like this is one of those you set it and forget it. And
yeah. Just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the Minnesota Vikings at the Atlanta Falcons.
To that matchup, by the way.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Right? We had the English accent. I think so. I know you're asking the wrong person.
I feel good about it. Off we descend. Let's go. Let's head to back on over. Where are we headed to? No, we're headed to Atlanta. So I don't know what an Atlanta accent sounds like. So I'm just going to be American for now. Oh.
Sounds good. Yeah. Shout out to our German listeners. But yeah, the game of the week, maybe Minnesota and Atlanta, because we got Jaren Hall versus Taylor Heineke quarterback matchup. Yeah, this is not going to be game of the week. This is not very exciting. Like you said, as far as quarterback streaming options, guys like Taylor Heineke, it's not like the most amazing or exciting position to be in if you're plugging those guys into lineups, but we're avoiding the quarterbacks here. I don't think anybody's really excited about starting them. Where would you want to start for this game?
Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. Sure. I want to gauge your level of confidence in this offense now that the Heineke hive has arrived and we have a quarterback who maybe will be able to deliver the ball to his offensive weapons and might be able to move up and down the field. Maybe even has like some sneaky mobility to maybe open up things a little bit for the run game. Like, what is our level of confidence that Taylor Heineke is going to come out and get the start, and suddenly this Atlanta Falcons offense is going to look like what we had hoped it would for fantasy. Because to this point, even Bijan Robinson, like, sitting at, I think, RB12 on the year, still seeking his first top 5 fantasy finish of the entire season.
Yeah, he's still sharing those snaps a little bit with like guys like Tyler Algier, and then obviously we saw that weird game where he only had like 3 snaps or whatever it was. But yeah, as far as level of confidence in this offense goes, it couldn't have gotten any lower than it was with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. It was basically like, if we're going like a color scheme here, it was in the red for me with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. So we're like getting into like a light orange maybe here for Taylor Heineke at quarterback.
Like a fall, like a warm fall color.
Yeah. Slowly working our way into like a yellow, maybe potentially being more a little bit neutral. And then maybe one day it'll get to a green, but it's not there yet. I just feel like, I feel better about it. Again, it's a decent matchup for wide receivers. So Drake London, I feel okay about him this week. At Kyle Pitts, to an extent, I think could be, inside of that top 10 tight end range again this week, considering, again, bye weeks and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just so over this whole Atlanta offense and Arthur Smith at this point. I think everybody's extremely frustrated with him, but
he's a jerk. Am I allowed to say that? He is a butthead. He's kind of a butthead. Brought to you by fantasy football. Like he's a little bit of a butthead, and I honestly think he's kind of done this like to spite. Like, I know this is like very, very conspiracy theory of me, but I am almost certain he doesn't want to give us the fantasy assets we've been hoping for. But I do think like this matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, they could do a lot worse in terms of a matchup to at least make the pass look a little bit better and look a little bit more productive. But you're playing Drake London, you're playing Kyle Pitts, I guess.
Yeah, I am. I'm putting those guys out there this week and hoping that the quarterback change is enough to kind of spark the offense a little bit. And hopefully we get some more accuracy. I know we were kind of hoping that with Desmond Ridder going from Marcus Mariota. So again, we just kind of stay with these, low end quarterbacks here and kind of hope for one of them to emerge. But I think you go with Drake London this week. We go with Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith in like super deep leagues, really. But yeah, and then the Bijan Robinson, I have a hard time sitting him. I'm not going to do that, but it's a fine matchup against Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the Minnesota side of things, like I said, we got Jaren Hall at quarterback, maybe Josh Dobbs the week after that, but let's start with the running back here, Alexander Mattison. How are you feeling about Alexander Mattison? Atlanta is giving up 31st most points to running backs this week, so a very tough matchup for running backs. For me personally, you give me any reason to bench Alexander Mattison, I am going to take it at this point in the season. He has been not good. And what's crazy is Minnesota's offensive line, their run blocking unit has been the second best in the league, and he's still one of the most inefficient running backs in the league, 39th in yards per carry with 3.7. Weird backfield usage there with Cam Akers getting chunks of time as well. And now you get this difficult matchup here against Atlanta. I'm all the way out on Alexander Mattison this week. How about you?
Yeah, all the way out. Yet to allow a single running back more than 15 fantasy points at a single game this year. Like, they face some good running backs too, like Travis Etienne, a top 5 running back on the season. Jahmyr Gibbs, we've seen what he can do, just under 9 fantasy points apiece to each of those. Like, this has not been a high upside matchup to target. This is a defense that hasn't yet allowed a single rushing touchdown to a running back this year. 7th lowest explosive run rate in the league. Like, not a plus matchup, not at all the one to hope that Alexander Mattison just breaks one off. And I'm going to be honest, like, I want to see what this offense actually looks like without Kirk Cousins, and how often are they going to be able to run the ball even? Are they going to be able to get something cooking enough in the passing game to keep them in games? Like, that's what I want to know, because the Minnesota Vikings defense, I don't think is strong enough to hold off. Like, for a comparison to my Steelers here, like the Steelers offense sucks, but the defense is enough to just kind of keep him hanging in games just perpetually. And that's not the case for the Minnesota Vikings. So kind of interesting to see how this is going to play out from a game script perspective, but definitely not the matchup to test your running backs against. I will find any other player besides Alexander Mattison. I have a good one for you though. Alexander Mattison or Najee Harris.
I'll go Najee Harris.
See, that's how bad it is.
I know. You feel kind of gross about it, but man, like it's the battle of mid there again at the running back position. But Najee Harris, I'll take him over Madison. Madison has been incredibly frustrating to me. He's just like, he has the offensive line that he can work behind, and they're giving him as much as they can, and he's doing nothing with. He's like the opposite of what James Conner was while he was in the lineup, right? The Cardinals' offensive line was terrible. James Conner was like outdoing everything that he could to basically come up with extreme efficiency despite the offensive line. And then for Alexander Mattison, it's the opposite there. It's a great offensive line and really poor efficiency for Alexander Mattison. So I'll go with Najee Harris this week. But yeah, it's not like a super high confidence, but I'm fed up with Alexander Mattison.
Yeah, that kind of says it all. I'm fed up and tired, which is why literally anybody else, but I'm gonna be honest, anybody who like asks me start sick questions on Twitter, if you ask me Alexander Mattison, I'm probably gonna say literally any other name besides his.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then how about, so we know Jaren Hall's at quarter. What's your levels of confidence for somebody like Jordan Addison? Because we don't know really what Jaren Hall's going to be at quarterback. It's not like an amazing matchup against the Falcons, but I don't feel like terrible about Jordan Addison, where like if I've been starting, I feel like he's been good, where he's kind of earned targets. It's not, I think Jaren Hall should be at least kind of kept clean in the pocket, so there might be time for him to throw. The Atlanta defensive line is not great at delivering pressure or anything like that. They also just lost their best interior player in Grady Jarrett to a torn ACL. So maybe on Jordan Addison, I feel okay about him. How about you? Am I reading it wrong? Should I be benching Jordan Addison this week?
I think it depends on your options, to be totally honest.
Mm-hmm.
If I can, obviously you're starting TJ Hawkinson. If I can afford to sit any of these guys just to wait it out, this isn't like a super plus matchup. It's not the scariest, but it's also not the most fruitful matchup for the Atlanta Falcons. Defense has been decent. You mentioned the maybe lack of pass rush from the Atlanta Falcons, but I don't know how much Ezra Cleveland is going to move the needle here. Traded guard Ezra Cleveland to the Jaguars. Not sure if will that make any sort of difference? No,
not for me.
No,
not against Atlanta necessarily, right? Just because, like I said, they lost their best interior player in Grady Jarrett. Although David Onyemata has been good, but I still don't love the Atlanta defensive line. So I don't know.
So you don't care. You're like, they could run free and they're fine. That's totally okay. I just don't, I don't know. Again, I'm going to have Addison ranked as like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 sort of flex play. I'm not expecting a lot of upside. I'm not looking to get him in like my DFS lineups or anything like that. Like I think if you're starting him, you're going to really hope for a passing touchdown. You're going to hope that he takes one to the house, which luckily he is the type of player that can do that. So probably not in a position to sit him, especially considering the players we're missing this week, but I'm not excited about it.
Yeah, I think that's about where I am anyways. Like in that kind of flex range, wide receiver 3 type, probably. Assuming that we have some other good options at wide receiver as well. But yeah, I think you play him, and it could work out. Again, there's some advantages at least for the Minnesota offense to an extent against Atlanta here, but we'll see how it goes. Obviously. All right, let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks at the Baltimore Ravens. Where do you want to start with this game?
I don't know. Let's talk about the run game here in
Sure,
Seattle, because
sure.
I think maybe that's like the biggest question mark I
Yeah.
have for the Seattle Seahawks right now. Um, we saw finally a little bit of a increase in snap share here for rookie Zach Charbonnet last week. Outsnapped Kenneth Walker for the first time in his career. Didn't translate to a ton of touches necessarily, but he looked good. And you know what? You have Pete Carroll out here absolutely singing his praises all throughout the week. Like he he's liking what he's seeing from Charbonnet, and I can't blame him. Charbonnet I thought was one of the most well-rounded running backs coming out of this draft class. Just he's different than Kenneth Walker. What Kenneth Walker offers you in terms of that breakaway speed, home run hitting ability, I think Charbonnet just adds this element of stability. Like, he's always going to fall forward. He's got a lot of like lower body strength. He's going to, play through contact. And I think that's starting to catch the eye of good old Pete Carroll here. Is there any world in which you're buying the hype and you're throwing Zach Charbonnet into a lineup this week?
I'm buying the hype. I don't know if I'm starting him, but I at least feel optimistic about him that his role can at least kind of increase and he'll give us more fantasy value as the season goes on, right? Like you said, he is a different running back than Kenneth Walker. Walker didn't really profile much as a receiver running back. So Charbonnet offers that at least, and we're seeing him getting a little bit more work as a receiver as well. And we've seen him be efficient with his touches, especially last week as well. In his first game back after I guess it was a hamstring or something like that. He missed the week prior, but good to see that he looked healthy. And I think, like you said, there's talent there, and it's going to be hard to kind of keep him off the field, especially since he does offer something different than Kenneth Walker. So I probably wait and kind of see what the usage is again this week, because I know Kenneth Walker also kind of dealing with some injury stuff. So maybe there's some of that reasoning behind it as well, that Charbonnet got more work. But I feel good rest of season about Charbonnet. There's definitely going to be, I think if things keep trending in this direction for him, there's going to be weeks where I'll be starting him. But I think this week I might wait on him. But yeah, that's just me.
I think that's fair. But had to throw it out there. I had to throw it out there.
It's good. It's good. Yeah, he's a really interesting player, and I think there's going to be some fantasy value there at some point this season for sure. How about anything else on Seattle? Because I mean, we feel pretty decent about Metcalf and Lockett. Geno Smith. So Baltimore is allowing the least amount of points to the quarterback position. So Geno Smith is somebody that could potentially be avoided, but you're probably not benching Metcalf or Lockett because of it. But as far as streaming options go, Geno Smith probably not the answer this week. Going against the Ravens, he just hasn't been as effective as a fantasy option this year as he was last year either, right? So this matchup doesn't bode well for him. How about on the Ravens side of things? How do you feel about potentially Gus Edwards? I know we've kind of been talking about Justice Hill as kind of the one that, when it was close, like the one that we'd prefer, but Gus Edwards has kind of pulled away a little bit here, and he's been pretty effective lately. So how do you feel about starting Gus Edwards here against the Seahawks?
I'm loving Gus Edwards. Now, the Seahawks have improved their rushing defense overall from last season. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the free-for-all matchup that it was last year, but this is still a great spot. And, like we talked about the reasons we liked Justice Hill, and it was because of the usage, where he was being utilized. And we've actually seen a flip in that usage over the last 2 weeks. It's really been Gus Edwards in the red zone. He's been converting those rushing touchdowns. It's been Gus Edwards inside the 5. Like, that is the exact usage that had us giving the nod to Justice Hill if you had to pick one. So, the fact that now you have Gus Edwards getting the bulk of the carries, which he has all along, but he's also getting those valuable touches that are worth, more than your standard carry. Like, that is what's going to set Gus Edwards over the edge. And I mean, he's been a top 2 running back each of the last 2 weeks. It's a fine matchup. I think you absolutely play him. You're going to play Lamar Jackson, obviously. How are you feeling about Zay Flowers? This could be an interesting matchup. Team ranks 8th in fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. So not a bad matchup. And he's looked good.
Yeah. I think I'm playing Zay Flowers for sure this week. I mean, he's really been like far and away the Ravens' top wide receiver, right? And it's him and Mark Andrews, and then there's a mix of everybody else. So he's been super effective against zone coverage specifically. Seattle is the most zone heavy team in the league. And Zay Flowers ranks tied for 24th in fantasy points per route run against zone. No other Baltimore wide receiver cracks the top 80 in that regard either. So Zay Flowers is the one for me. He is the only one that I'm trusting. And like you said, 8th most points to wide receivers. I'm not trusting the rotation enough among those guys, the rest of those guys, Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman to plug them into lineups just yet. But very happy to plug Zay Flowers into a lineup this week.
Yeah, just over, 7.5 targets per game for Zay Flowers. You love to see that usage. Obviously you're playing Mark Andrews. I think right now, at least, the Baltimore Ravens feel like one of the simplest offenses for fantasy that we just kind of, we have our questions answered right now, which feels really nice. I think you kind of know what this offense is. You have Lamar Jackson, the only sleeper play maybe that I could point out here. Any thoughts on Rashad Bateman? He's getting the treatment from Lamar Jackson saying he needs to get Rashad Bateman the ball. And I mean, Rashad Bateman, like we had been everybody in the fantasy community was all aboard the Rashad Bateman train when we thought he would be healthy. And it seems like he's gotten healthy. This is a nice matchup for opposing wide receivers. Any thought to the like squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing? Like, is Lamar Jackson going to force feed Rashad Bateman targets this week?
That would be nice. I just don't know if the snaps are going to be there, right? Like that was the only thing with this Ravens wide receiver group, other than Zay Flowers, is they're getting Odell Beckham in there. That's not a full-time role. Rashad Bateman's working in there. That's not it's just, I don't know. I think there's potential maybe like for that target rate, like you said. It's just how much of that opportunity is going to be there throughout the game. And again, this is still a run heavy offense here with the Ravens. So God, I love Rashad Bateman too. I really liked him coming out. I liked him as a player, but he's continuously let me down. I feel like I've been burnt. So I'm trying to I don't know. I'm trying to move away from Rashad Bateman at this point. So I don't think I'm starting him this week.
Just to be clear, like I don't think you should, but I've seen some of the narratives on floating around the Twitter sphere of people, who remember the days of yonder before Odell Beckham was in town, before Zay Flowers was drafted. They remember the days of Rashad Bateman. He hasn't cracked 36 receiving yards yet this season. So like, I'm not anticipating it, but just figured it was a timely discussion given the fact that Lamar Jackson just came out to say that he wants to get him the ball more. But to be fair, he's been on the field for 7 games this year and has yet to see more than 3 targets in a single one. So I'll believe it when I see it. But
that's the thing. Like maybe like a deep like DFS play or something like that. You take a shot on him because
like
he's
the
probably
deepest
not gonna
of DFS plays. Yeah.
Yeah, because I still like the talent. I still believe in the talent, but just not the situation over there right now anyways. So I think that's pretty much it from this game. Let's move on and we'll just do a quick ad break here from the folks at Prize Picks. So I didn't get a chance to go through and pick my own picks here, but we do have a PFF Prize Picks lineup specialty this week, and that is Tyjae Spears with more than 12.5 receiving yards and Will Levis more than 202.5 passing yards. So a little Thursday night special there, brought to you by the folks at PFF. How do you feel about that one, Kate? Any confidence in 12.5 for Tyjae Spears and Will Levis?
I like that because, the Pittsburgh Steelers, not good against running backs. And I don't know, that secondary has been a liability, unfortunately, for the Steelers.
I like it. All right. Yeah. So let's roll with that one. And then Prize Picks also mentions that with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So for example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made plus reception. So that's interesting. I want to see like if they can work a way to get like Travis Kelce plus Taylor Swift combo somehow, like tickets sold plus receptions. I feel like Travis Kelce not going to be a high contributor in that one, but it still could be fun. But yeah, go to prizepicks.com/PFF fantasy and use code PFF fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/PFF fantasy and use code PFF fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, let's go to the Arizona Cardinals at the Cleveland Browns. And I kind of want to start with the Arizona side of things because they are doing my guy Clayton Tune dirty for his first NFL start this week, going against the Browns defense. Not ideal for Clayton Tune getting his first NFL start against this team. The Browns allowing the 28th most points to quarterbacks. We know all of their defensive metrics being among the best in the NFL. So as far as this Arizona offense goes, I have confidence levels that are all in the red at this point for everybody. Marquise Brown, again, I don't love him. I'm trying to avoid their running backs if I can afford to, and maybe Trey McBride. I don't know. How do you feel about? Let's start. Yeah, okay.
Nope.
Yeah, 32nd most points to tight ends.
Let me stop you there, bud. I know. I was fading Trey McBride last week, and I looked like an absolute idiot. He finished as the overall tight end one. Can you trust him again? Because he rolled the dice. It wasn't a great matchup for opposing tight ends last week, and McBride came out and did what he did against the Ravens. But now you got, just a terrible situation with Josh Dobbs shipped out of town, a rookie quarterback. This entire Browns offense or defense has allowed just 133 total yards to tight ends all season long. That's the lowest in the league, allowing the second lowest EPA per play on targets to the tight end position. Like, this is just a no-go. There will be not one single, and I'm in too many fantasy leagues, John. I'm in way too many. There will not be a single Arizona Cardinal on one of my rosters in an active lineup, period.
I think I'm with you. I really do. I don't know that. I mean, yeah, like
what's the upside?
Brown, I know there's not much. The hope for me, like, only because I like Clayton Tune. So like there's this sliver of hope for me that he can be at least serviceable.
No. No.
Fair enough. All right. Fair enough.
I cannot wait for Clayton Tune and Trey McBride to connect for like 6 touchdowns this week. And you're never going to let me back on the show again. And it's been nice knowing you all, but no, I'm not comfortable enough rolling the dice. Like, this is already an inexperienced NFL tight end. You're pairing him with an inexperienced quarterback up against what is arguably like a top 3 NFL defense. Like, no, thank you. No.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough for the Arizona Cardinals offense this week. I wish we got Clayton Tune in his debut against a better defense, at least a more favorable one for him. So that's not going to be the case, unfortunately. So let's look at the Cleveland Browns instead. Deshaun Watson potentially returning. It seemed like he was back at practice this week. So, okay. What about the running back situation? Because Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt were kind of sharing carries. Pierce Strong was working in there as well. Who, I guess, do you trust among this Browns backfield here if you're going to be starting anybody in lineups?
I think you're going to start Kareem Hunt. I'm okay starting Jerome Ford. The thing about this backfield is you kind of have this extraneous factor. Last week, you had Jerome Ford. He suffered an ankle injury the week prior, had missed practice throughout the week. And then you saw almost a perfect even split of offensive snaps between Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, and Pierre Strong. You had Hunt lead the team in carries, and then you had him get the red zone work, end zone work. So, like, from that perspective, I think you start Kareem Hunt. My only question is, with another week removed from this ankle injury, do we see a change in Ford's usage? Maybe we see a decrease in that snap share for Pierre Strong, and then we see the workload for Jerome Ford increase potentially. Ford still was efficient last week in his limited touches, but that's the only thing I'm kind of, keeping my eye on in terms of just seeing what another week with him further removed from this injury looks like. But I think the only one you can really trust with like a feel good moment, like in the full green, is going to be Kareem Hunt for some of that touchdown potential, a touchdown in 3 straight games here. And like I said, a lot of that is thanks to like where he's been getting carries, and that's been in the end zone, red zone, anywhere.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's still Kareem Hunt, but I don't feel terrible about Jerome Ford. I think he's potentially startable in those deeper leagues and that kind of like high end, like RB3 maybe territory. Because I think there is potentially, again, getting healthier, like you said, a week removed from that ankle injury. And I think it more cuts into Pierre Strong's workload as well. And we see Jerome Ford get some more carries this week. And he's been effective. And it's a decent matchup too, like the Browns offensive line going against a pretty poor Cardinals defensive line as well. If we're looking at the O-line matchup, O-line D-line matchup tool, Jerome Ford has earned 7.9 yards per carry when given at least a yard before contact, which is the 7th best mark in the league for running backs who have at least 25 carries. So there's some efficiency there to trust in Ford, and I think you expect the workload to potentially increase a little bit as well. And I think we see Pierre Strong decrease a little bit this week. That's kind of my read on it, anyways.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Anybody else on the Browns? I mean, I feel pretty good about starting Amari Cooper, but anybody else that grabs your interest this week?
I think David Njoku's a fine play. It's not a great play. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just not excited about this game in general. I think this could be one of the lower scoring matchups of the week here. I just don't know that we can expect a whole lot of fantasy production from this game, just based on game script, just based on the state of these two franchises. I'm not overly excited.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's not an exciting matchup at all, but it'll be interesting, I guess, to see what Deshaun Watson looks like, potentially starting here with that shoulder injury and whatever. But I think it's Amari Cooper. Feel okay about those running backs in deeper leagues, and then Arizona, like you said, we are avoiding the group. So let's go on to the next game on the list here. It is the Los Angeles Rams at the Green Bay Packers. Where can we start with this one? Let's start with the Packers, I guess. So, okay, we got a few streaming options at quarterbacks this week. How do you feel about Jordan Love as one of those potential streamers this week? Again, with the injuries at quarterback and the bye weeks as well, is Jordan Love somebody that you feel pretty good about? The Rams allowing the 8th most points to quarterbacks so far this season.
This is such a absolute brutal, just I hate this week, John. I just hate this week. I'm not feeling great about Jordan Love. I'm honestly like, I understand the matchup. It should be conducive to some scoring here, but like to this point in the season, I mean, Jordan Love, he hasn't been efficient, right? Like he hasn't been great. He's completing less than 58% of passes. Like we've seen the touchdown production diminish significantly. Like he started red hot with back-to-back 3 touchdown outings to start his career, and then since then it's just kind of been bleh. And I don't necessarily know that I feel confident enough in the weapons he's got around him. Christian Watson, for as much maybe upside that there is there, hasn't been the most efficient when targeted. It is his birthday today. So just, today, as we're recording Thursday, November 2nd. So happy birthday, Jordan Love. I'm going to hope for a viable fantasy day for you, but I'm not so sure it's coming. It's just been a really brutal stretch for him. And that's not to say that he can't be the franchise guy, but I mean, 5 straight games with a pick, multiple picks at times, and he's not throwing enough touchdowns. It's just not a good enough matchup for me. And there's too much inconsistency, too much inexperience here for these receivers to overcome that for him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. No, it's fair, and I think part of the problem too has been these weapons, right? Like it feels like Christian Watson has really kind of under delivered it, and he has. It doesn't just feel that way. He's definitely underperformed, especially compared to last year. We knew there'd be some regression, but it's been pretty rough at this point, and there's been some injury stuff there to be concerned about as well. But I'm not overly excited about Christian Watson this week. Like if I have to pick, Green Bay wide receivers, I'm probably going Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed over Christian Watson if I have to. I just don't trust him at this point. Like it's kind of messy, and I don't think he's all the way healthy, and that part of it has me kind of concerned about Christian Watson right now.
It's really been all or nothing for Christian Watson to this
Yeah.
point in the season. You mentioned even like Jaden Reed, he's a rookie and has been more productive for fantasy than Christian Watson. Interestingly, like throughout this week, even the rostership rates for Christian Watson are still kind of through the roof, and it boggles my mind. Like I fully think that Christian Watson is droppable at this point, just given how this offense is playing and the fact that there seems to be two better wide receivers staring Jordan Love in the eye right there, who offer a little bit more consistency and efficiency in terms of that connection there. Jaden Reed, even being a rookie, has been kind of a pleasant surprise. 3 touchdowns on the year so far. Has been kind of consistently involved, since the start of the season, and you love to see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Those guys have definitely been more consistent. And yeah, maybe like if you're aiming for upside, you take the swing on Christian Watson. But if you don't need the upside, you want consistency, you don't want somebody to kill you with a low floor on this week, then yeah, I'm fine going Dobbs or Reed or even Luke Musgrave. I know still 0 touchdowns on the year, but the Rams are giving up the 5th most points to tight ends. I'm hopeful again for Luke Musgrave, but I know more of like a tight end too, more than anything so far this year. So there's potential this week, but yeah, still been kind of down, I guess, compared to expectations.
Yeah, not been a super fruitful matchup, but again, like it feels like he's still he's like been close, right? It feels like close but no cigar. You can't trust Luke Musgrave as much as I love him, and I think he's got plenty of upside. Just hasn't shown enough. And again, like same concern I have for Jordan Love. Like what you're really hoping for with some of these streaming tight ends is the potential for a touchdown, because 1 touchdown and you might find yourself with a top 5 tight end with how things go. And I just don't know that production is necessarily going to be there for Luke Musgrave, even if this is a favorable matchup.
Yeah. And he keeps getting banged up too. It doesn't help that guys are trying to kill him out there. Look at Kareem Jackson, for example. So that's been part of the problem is he's left games as well with injuries. So anybody else on Green Bay? I know Aaron Jones is continuing to be limited and maybe getting increased workload slowly here. So it's still hard to trust him. But again, another guy we know has extremely high upside, but just hasn't been getting the workload that we've hoped for from Aaron Jones so far this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to trust them at this point, right? Because it doesn't seem like the Packers are trusting him. So we want to see that workload increase a little bit. And yeah,
the one thing that has maybe been a good sign. So like for the usage, you didn't see an increase in usage last week, although you did by usage, I mean touches. Yeah. The one thing we did see with Aaron Jones is that his snap share increased a little bit. We've seen a decrease in snap share over the last 2 weeks for AJ Dillon. So like maybe this is just more of a matter of like making sure he's healthy before you ram him into defensive linemen. Maybe that's it. But like, I think you have to be really cautious with Aaron Jones at this point. It's really hard to sit him, just knowing the upside and the potential. That's probably the one sign of encouragement that I can give though to our listeners is that fact that we're starting to see that snap trend in the right direction. I'll just hope for another week of that. And then maybe we can feel comfortable with him moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes sense. On the Rams side of things, we don't know exactly who's going to be quarterback there unless I missed it, but Matthew Stafford maybe is coming back. He's got that thumb injury. I kept trying to look for injury news on him, and for whatever reason, I keep getting like Kelly Stafford versus something called Blueface as a feud. I don't know what the hell that is, but I'm not getting the Matthew Stafford injury news that I'm looking for. So I don't know who's going to be at court. Brett Rippon again, maybe last week he was not great. How do you feel about the Rams? I guess their wide receiver options if Matthew Stafford isn't able to go this week.
I think you have to play them and hope for the best, just knowing their upside, knowing their potential for volume. But generally speaking, I'm feeling a little bit better about these running backs than I am the wide receivers.
Yeah.
Green Bay, been a fine matchup for opposing running backs, 6th most fantasy points per game to the running back position. And you have LA who should need to run a little bit more. Like, if you have Rippon, you should probably run the ball more, right? Yeah. If you have Stafford, you're going to need to run the ball more. So like, I think there might actually be a little bit of room here for both of these Rams running backs, both Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman actually pretty widely available in fantasy leagues right now. So if you do need a spot play, I think you could do much worse than him. Green Bay's, generally been a nice matchup, a efficient matchup for opposing running backs. So I think you can do worse there. You start the wide receivers because you have to, and the ceiling's too high. Like you have to assume that a quarterback will target his best receivers and hope for the best. But I'm not getting cute with a Tyler Higbee or anything like that. Right. Just kind of crossing your fingers that things go okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect explanation of it, right? And yeah, it doesn't really matter who's at quarterback there. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, these guys, they've been so productive this year that it's hard to bench them, and they always perform better against zone coverages. I know they went against a very man-heavy defense last week and struggled, so they get a zone-heavy defense this week, and that could be a little bit better for them as well. All right, let's go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Houston Texans. Where do you want to start with this game?
Great question. This is a very interesting matchup. Let's start with the Houston Texans, who have been one of the more, I think, interesting offenses and maybe more surprising offenses than we've seen all season. The Houston Texans, like CJ Stroud has played super well to date. But you saw them kind of come out of the bye and just didn't seem to be as aggressive, and like felt like there was a lot of hype coming out of the bye, and it just felt like in week 8 just kind of slowly deflated. CJ Stroud didn't do a ton. Took 5 sacks took 0 sacks, 2 sacks. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm just a mess. 2 sacks last week, but didn't throw any passing touchdowns, which literally it wasn't a hard matchup against the Panthers. Not like the most favorable matchup, but I think you kind of expected maybe a little bit more from CJ Stroud in that outing. Just 24 pass attempts on the day, which like they came out of the gate and were just so pass heavy, right? And you knew that wasn't necessarily sustainable, but it was also working for them. Like they've been winning games and they've been, maybe not as many as you'd like, but like it had been working, I think, in a much better and more efficient way for them than the run has to this point in the season. So for me, the biggest question mark is, do they gravitate more towards CJ Stroud in this passing game? That's definitely going to be the way to attack the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like the matchup against running backs continues to be a tough one, a challenging one. Bucks are allowing the 29th most fantasy points to opposing running backs this year. The way to attack them has been more so through the air. So like from a game planning perspective, if I'm D'Amico Ryans, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to sort of flex my rookie. I think this could be a really nice bounce back spot for Nico Collins, for Tank Dell. But again, you just need the game planning to be there, and you need CJ Stroud not to only throw 24 pass attempts on the day.
Yeah, no, I think they will pass a little bit more this week. And like you said, it did cost them against Carolina last week. So I'm with you. I think Nico Collins and Tank Dell are strong starts this week. Both of those guys rank among the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy points per route run against man coverage this season, where the Bucks have run like at least a league average amount of man coverage as well. They mix it up a little bit there. So there's some room for them to kind of attack. And like you said, ninth most points to the wide receiver position as well. So those would be the guys that I'd be looking at, as well as Stroud, Collins, Dell. Not interested in Dameon Pierce. I know he's still getting a little bit more of the goal line work there, but like you said, not a great matchup against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has allowed 4 rushing touchdowns this year, but all of them have been to quarterbacks and none to running backs. So there's that as well. So I don't have interest in the Dameon Pierce types or Devin Singletary this week against Tampa Bay, but very interested in Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and CJ Stroud. I think this is a decent matchup for them to get back on track here. How about on the Tampa Bay side of thing? Anything really interesting there for you for these guys? Because I mean, we know like Baker Mayfield, he's been able to take advantage of like the really positive matchups in a way, not so much in tougher matchups. This is kind of like an average matchup for him. So it's harder to, want to plug him into lineups, but it's not overly scary either. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel great about a lot of the Tampa Bay options this week against the Texans, who have been good as far as coverage goes, and it's not causing you to sit Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, but at the very least probably have you tempering expectations a little bit for them. So anybody on Tampa Bay that you're excited about this week?
Nobody I'm excited about. I still think you're playing Rachaad White for the hope that like he's gonna get some targets. Even if that isn't necessarily the best running back matchup to target anymore for the running back position. Definitely concerned more about the receivers. So they're the Texans' biggest sort of weakness. Feels like it's more, for these like slot receivers, not necessarily, Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, who like Chris Godwin can play on the inside or play out of the slot. He has for the last several years. And suddenly this year, they've primarily used him just on the outside. So have seen that flip in usage, which has made me, like you said, temper expectations for both he and Mike Evans, just knowing where the Texans' weaknesses are. If they can use Chris Godwin out of the slot a little bit more this week, I think that would be to their beneficial, to their benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, to their benefit. Yeah. But I think that is kind of it is what it is. And I think it's that, yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think it's pretty straightforward matchup. I don't think you're scared of the Texans defense to the point where you're benching these guys because they have been very productive. Mike Evans especially has been super productive regardless of coverages that he's faced or anything like that. So I like Mike Evans. Let's go to the Washington Commanders at the New England Patriots here, and let's start with the Washington offense, because I don't know, the Patriots offense is really not that interesting to me, but we'll talk about them in a little bit. But I am definitely interested in the Washington offense. So let's start with their wide receivers. So what are your trust levels here, at least for Jahan Dotson? So he's coming off his best week of the year. Obviously, he had the QB or wide receiver 7 finish. He had the touchdown last week. Interestingly, both of his receiving touchdowns this year have come against the Eagles in week 4 and week 8. But he's still just 7th on the team in target rate, 14.1%, which is 79th among wide receivers who have run at least 100 routes this season. So it's a man heavy defense there in New England. They've been pretty good from that coverage. It's not like a terrible matchup. They are giving the 12th most points to wide receivers. So trust levels, I guess, for Jahan Dotson. Do you want to see it one more time from him, or are you okay plugging him into lineups this week?
I'd like to see it one more time. I think like I just knowing how volatile this offense has been at times, especially in terms of like who that production came against, right? It came against the Eagles, and apparently Sam Howell against the Eagles is like Patrick Mahomes against anybody except the Denver Broncos, apparently. But like kind of interesting to see them find so much success against this Eagles team. It is a team that's been hemorrhaging fantasy points to wide receivers. So like that kind of makes sense that Jahan Dotson found some success against a coverage unit that's been allowing a lot to wide receivers. So I'd like to see it against, maybe a little bit more challenging a matchup. This Patriots defense has not been necessarily what it has been in previous years, but they are beatable in some ways, but I just don't think that this is a spot where I'm going to trust, a guy I consider, pretty much a wide receiver 3, on most days, on that respective offense, not just for fantasy. I just don't know that there's enough upside there for me to be chasing against the Patriots here.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat as you. I love Jahan Dotson, liked him coming into the season, but he hasn't really shown it this year outside of last game. And I think I do. I want to see it one more time, at least some consistency there out of him and his usage in this offense, because we know the volume is there for Sam Howell and company. He leads the league in dropbacks with 369 so far this year. So there's a ton of passing volume to be had, but he still hasn't been able to get the usage that we've hoped for. So I'm pretty much Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas this week for the Washington receiving options, at least. Anybody else on Washington that's interesting for you?
No, not not really. Sure. I want to, I'm trusting Sam Howell. He's been really productive to date this season. Brian Robinson, it's kind of been a roller coaster, but again, like if you're in a pinch and need a guy that might fall into the end zone, he's leading the team in carries inside the 5. So like those valuable touches have been Brian Robinson's, but again, I think this entire offense, maybe outside of, even Terry McLaurin to this point, can be kind of volatile. But that's kind of the ride you're taking here with the Washington Commanders in general.
Yeah. Sam Howell is the star that we love here in Washington, but everybody else is struggling to keep up with him. And then on the New England side, maybe we could find some deeper plays here. I don't know about you, but it is so hard to trust this offense at this point in the season. I know Washington, they're giving up the second most points to the quarterback position. They're giving the second most points to the wide receiver position. But the question is, how much do you trust this quarterback wide receiver combo here in New England? They've been rotating their wide receivers like crazy. For me, Kendrick Bourne feels like the only one worth trusting. And then if I have to come up with a deep play, it's probably Demario Douglas. They're both the top 2 on the team in target rate, but
Kendrick Bourne out.
He's out this week. Oh,
torn ACL.
Yeah. How did I miss this?
I don't know.
My God.
It broke my heart.
God.
Okay, one of my favorite. No, that's okay. That's okay. They actually thought it wasn't going to be an ACL. So the news kind of slipped through the cracks there because they were kind of marketing it as, I think, a less severe knee injury than it was. So like that top receiving option out for the year. So like this offense is going to have to move on quickly, and they haven't been efficient with really anybody else besides Kendrick Bourne. I actually think Demario Douglas could be an okay option given the matchup. And let's consider the fact that Washington just traded away their 2 best pass rushers, Montez Sweat, Chase Young. They're gone. Hopefully that'll mean a clean pocket for Mac Jones. And hopefully that'll mean he can find a wide receiver, maybe, Hunter Henry, I think also kind of a fine play considering, they're going to be without Kendrick Bourne, who leads the team in targets. But yeah, you're not going to like any of these New England assets. This is a game where if you're starting the players in it, you're going to not watch it and just pray. And you're not going to check the score until the game is over and done, because you're probably going to be sweating through 3 quarters of football. And then you're going to get your point production at the end. I think you can do worse than Demario Douglas. He's been, to this point in the season, actually, one of the most efficient, Patriots receivers, leading the team in yards per route run, leading the teams in yards after the catch per reception. Like from an efficiency standpoint, PFF receiving grade, like he's been the best guy. Is a 6th-round wide receiver ready to step up? I don't know, but at least it's against the Washington Commanders, which they are hemorrhaging fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So
yeah,
this is like, if you can't start him here, you're probably not going to be able to start him many places. He's, seen an increase in snap share over the last 2 weeks anyway, even with Kendrick Bourne in the mix. So we might have started to see that tide turning. It might just be turning a little bit quicker now, but bounce back soon, Kendrick.
That's a bummer. I don't know how I missed it, honestly. But buried in work here, and then shows how much I care obviously about the New England wide receivers. But
that's how not relevant this team has been for fantasy, because they don't pop up in your analysis very often. You know why? Because they don't score fantasy points.
They really don't. And Demario Douglas, that does make me feel a little bit better about him, at least as far as guys that can earn targets on that team. And he's played over Juju Smith-Schuster even in the slot as well. So there's potential there for Demario Douglas. So don't mind that. And like you said, if you can't start them this week, then these guys are getting airlocked out into space for the rest of the season for me, basically. So let's go to the Chicago Bears at the New Orleans Saints. And we'll start with let's start with the New Orleans side of things here. Chicago's allowing the 3rd most points to quarterback, so decent matchup for Derek Carr, who had a nice game last week. We know that he's got some offensive weapons there, so he could potentially be one of those streaming quarterbacks this week. I know he's not somebody that we typically feel great about starting on a regular basis, but I don't know. I know you're also anti Derek Carr, but how do you feel about him this week against the Chicago Bears?
I am usually pretty anti Derek Carr, but this week I think he's fine. I regret to say it out loud. Nobody quote me on this, but Derek Carr sitting right now as my quarterback 11 in my rankings this week. I think the weaponry is there, and like, for as much mockery as the Chicago Bears have been this year, their rushing defense has actually been better than I think you would generally expect. So I think that this is kind of a good spot for them to maybe funnel some of that work through the pass, just given the some of the inefficiency that they have not been giving up on the ground. So I think this should be a favorable matchup for Derek Carr. I'm fine with Derek Carr. He's got the talent surrounding him. So it's not a weapons issue. We know that, and he's looked a little bit healthier at least last week. So, hopefully we see that tide start to turn. Didn't, target our friend Alvin Kamara 80 times last week. We saw a little bit, we saw things calm down a little bit there. So hopefully, going to use some of those weapons down the field. Rashid Shaheed, super efficient. Chris Olave, obviously super talented. Like, this offense is loaded, and this should be a situation where you see some pass heavy game script here.
Yeah, I would hope so. And Chris Olave definitely has to make up for that really embarrassing drop that he had last week, where it hits him right in the face. So I like Chris Olave this week. Obviously like Alvin Kamara a ton. I think Nathan has him as his RB1 this week. So we like the matchup a decent amount, but a lot more for the receiving options there for Alvin Kamara as well, especially in PPR. But like you said, Chicago's surprisingly decent against the run. And Michael Thomas, probably more of a flex option for me, but that is pretty much the New Orleans Saints, I think. Rashid Shaheed, as far as deep threats, you're looking for somebody. The Bears defense is not one that you're scared of, obviously, as far as their passing defense goes, their secondary. So there's potential there for Rashid Shaheed maybe to pop off another one of those big plays, but he's a lot more boom bust, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
And then on the Chicago side of things, do we know who is starting at quarterback? Is it Tyson Bagent again this week, or is it Justin Fields? I still haven't seen anything to clarify that to this point, but it feels like they might be going with Bagent again from what I saw earlier in the week.
I think, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Tyson Bagent. It seems like the grip strength still isn't necessarily there for Justin Fields, unfortunately. So seen some ups and downs here from Badgen. I'm not excited about really any of these guys, but I don't know. Cole Kmet is like, I don't know.
I'm not in love with Cole Kmet. I'm starting DJ Moore. Who would you play? I guess Deontay Foreman versus Roshan Johnson. So we've seen Roshan Johnson get a little bit more work. Foreman's been decent. We saw freaking Darrington Evans getting more of the goal line work last week, which was weird. So just
that backfield's going to be a mess. Like,
Khalil Herbert,
going to be returning. I think eligible to return after this week. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like this backfield's going to be a colossal mess. Yeah. Not looking forward to any of them, but like even the usage was just so chaotic between these running backs last week. Saw Roshan get plenty of the routes run, and you just saw a lot of like mixed usage that I don't think you can really feel great about starting any of these running backs. Just given sort of the myriad of usage, and like defensively, don't love this matchup against the Saints here. Allowing the 28th most fantasy points to running backs, just not been like a matchup to target, let alone target for a split backfield that's going in three different directions.
Yeah. This definitely feels like a group to avoid if you can here, and pretty much across the board. I mean, DJ Moore is the one that I feel okay about starting, but again, the Saints man coverage unit has been excellent this season, so you're really kind of hoping for DJ Moore to get pumped with volume there, and if it's Tyson Badgen at quarterback, that makes you feel probably less good about it. So apologies to anybody that has to start any Bears options this week. It doesn't feel like a great week. So let's go on to the Indianapolis Colts at the Carolina Panthers. And let's start with the Indianapolis Colts fantasy options, because Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, the dynamic duo over there, it's been a relatively even split in snaps. Moss has been super effective. He's still had double-digit carries in each of the past 2 games with Jonathan Taylor in the lineup. He's got a rushing touchdown in there as well to bring him up to 5 on the year. This is a great matchup for running back. So, Kate, would you be starting both Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss this week?
Yes, my bold prediction is that both of them finish as top 15 running backs in week 9.
Let's go.
It just seems like there's enough room to go around. And this is like, if there's going to be a matchup where 2 running backs can eat, I think it's going to be this one. They've ranked 8th and among NFL teams in total rush attempts since Jonathan Taylor returned in week 5. The Colts are averaging over 140 rushing yards per game in that span. That's the 3rd most in the league, leading the lead in rushing touchdowns in that span. Like, the volume is there, the efficiency has been there, and now they get the Carolina Panthers backfield that they're allowing just over 32 fantasy points to the running back position since week 5. And I don't know, you can't get much better of a matchup than this. They've allowed 4 different teams' backfields combined for 175 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns this season. I smash.
Yeah. The defense.
Can you tell I'm excited?
Yeah, this is a good one. This is definitely a good one for these guys, and really for the Indianapolis offense. I know Nate wrote up Gardner Minshew as a start this week. I know Nick wrote up Michael Pittman as a locked-in wide receiver 1 this week. So we know
you get a start. You get a start.
The Carolina defense has just been really full of holes here, and they're banged up as well. There's a lot of injuries. There's no real stars on that defense other than Brian Burns, and even he's had his struggles this year as far as consistency. So this is a great matchup for the Indianapolis Colts. I think you're starting those guys fairly easily. And on the Carolina side of things, Indianapolis also a decent matchup for running backs here. Indianapolis giving up the 5th most points to running backs. So it's not necessarily Miles Sanders. Chuba Hubbard is the guy out snapping Miles Sanders. How do you feel about this backfield this week?
I'm loving Chuba Hubbard. Like, I think this is a fantastic spot. And you know what, like, he wasn't necessarily like super efficient with those touches, but we've kind of seen this trend away from Miles Sanders. And for as not efficient as, maybe Chuba Hubbard has been, Miles Sanders has been less so. And I think that's kind of what they're hanging their hat on right now. Chuba Hubbard's just kind of been the better running back on the field. Miles Sanders had just 2 total carries in week 8.
Crazy.
Like, and he was off the injury report. So I know he was coming back from the shoulder injury, then went into the bye. But he was fully removed from the injury report, had no designation heading into this game. So like the fact that he saw just 2 carries, having been designated as healthy, you don't love that. But I do love Chuba Hubbard, and I'm going to trust that this offense is just kind of rolling with him. And, it might not be efficient, but it's really difficult to find a running back that's going to get 15 or so touches every week. And I think that's Chuba Hubbard right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And like you said, it wasn't necessarily the most effective week for him last week with those touches, but he's been decent this year. I think that could be, he could have better days ahead here. He hasn't been like Alexander Madison levels of inefficient or anything like that. So we like this matchup here against the Indianapolis Colts. They're also without one of their best run defending defensive lineman, Grover Stewart, as well. So that really helps the potential there for Chuba Hubbard. Yeah, I like him, like Adam Thielen. Bryce Young, probably like on the fringe of a start for me this week, but he's really mostly going to be for super flex leagues more than anything. Anybody else on Carolina?
No.
No. Yeah.
No.
Fair enough.
Like, why roll the dice?
I know, it's true. Yeah, they're the guys like what's his face, Jonathan Mingo, DJ Chark, like they just have not been involved enough or consistent enough to be trusting in fantasy lineups at this point. Adam Thielen has just been the target monster over there, so that is the guy that you definitely want to put in lineups. But other than that, yeah, I'm with you. I think those are the guys that we'll focus on. All right, let's do one quick ad break again. Last one. It is from our friends at Manscaped. Cue dramatic music. I hope they weren't expecting me to play dramatic music, but they put it in their ad read anyways. But I do not have dramatic music. It's not a bird. It's not a plane. It's the most revolutionary ball trimmer the world has ever seen. Gentlemen, our friends over at Manscaped have been working night and day to bring you a below the waist grooming experience like none other with their brand new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. We're talking about a next generation trimmer with interchangeable blade heads for whatever shave your mind can imagine. AI is cool, but I think this might be the biggest technological advancement the world has ever seen. Upgrade your grooming game to the Ultra Sphere this year by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with code PFF. High tech for low places. Manscaped. Every man knows how scary it is when you get going for a close shave below the belt. That's why I trust Manscaped for all my sensitive areas. Inside this package, you'll find the star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. Taking it on the go, Manscaped has you covered. This puppy comes with a travel case and even a travel lock feature to avoid any accidental powering and or weird looks in the airport. This right here is on the cutting edge of cutting pubes. Unreal. Upgrade your ball trimmer and your life will follow. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. I can promise you've never seen a ball trimmer look like a spaceship. Get yours today from our folks at Manscaped. All right. There's that one. Let's go on to our final stretch of games here. New York Giants at the Las Vegas Raiders. Kate, where should we start in this game?
I don't know. The Raiders don't really feel like a spot that yeah. I don't like. What do we do? What do we do with the Raiders? I honestly have no idea at this point. Like this, it is a mess. And for those of you who did not catch the just total dump of news this week, head coach fired, GM fired, like this entire team is going to look a lot different this week. Jimmy Garoppolo benched. Like we're going to have Aiden O'Connell as the starting quarterback. The team says he's going to give them their best shot. So cool. The I don't know, the majority of targets, I presume, will go to like they did in O'Connell's last tenure here just a few weeks ago, went to Devontae Adams, went to Josh Jacobs, and not many to go around to the rest of the crew.
Yeah, it is a really strange team at this point. Jimmy G getting benched. Today's his birthday as well, by the way. So happy birthday, Jimmy G, for getting benched.
I did see the team tweeted out, "Happy birthday, Jimmy G," and
Feels like a
the day
scheduled
after,
tweet that they
yes, the day after the man is benched, you go out, and I get like you have to tweet him happy birthday,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
man, like you benched him the day before his birthday. That is ice cold. Ice
It's
cold.
brutal. It is brutal. So I don't know what this team is going to look like under Aiden O'Connell here, but you got to figure the message is, feed your stars, right? Davante Adams, obviously frustrated last week. He was clearly upset on the sideline. Jimmy G missed him on 2 deep throws that basically would have been huge gainers, potential touchdowns as well. So you got to imagine they're going to try to feed Davante Adams. Hopefully Jacoby Myers works in there. Don't feel great about that potential happening here with O'Connell. Josh Jacobs, I feel fine about starting him. There's, I don't think you can avoid him. I think this is a nice matchup for him as well against the Giants. The Giants are giving up the 9th most points to running backs. They've allowed 1.6 rushing yards before contact per attempt, is the 3rd worst mark in the league. Their run defense is 54.5, which is 20th in the league. So Josh Jacobs, I think, is in for a strong week here. I think he should be getting a lot of touches again. And a telling number too, DraftKings has his rushing total at 73.5, which he's only been over once this season. So that's telling you what they think Josh Jacobs is going to do this week. So high expectations for him, but we'll see what the passing offense looks under Aiden O'Connell. He's starting Davante Adams, but Jacoby Myers might be on the fringe for me this week. Would you be playing Jacoby Myers? No. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And that's coming from somebody who very much appreciates what Jacoby Myers has done this season. Like he has looked absolutely incredible, and he's made the New England Patriots look like absolute fools for letting him walk. But not trusting it. Like you said, I think there's going to be a really big emphasis on getting your playmakers the ball. And I think the main playmaker here is going to be Davante Adams. And like I said, in O'Connell's last start, that was one thing he was good at, was getting the ball to Davante Adams and feeding the man the rock. And that is, I think, all you can ask. How about on the Giants side of the ball? We have Daniel Jones returning, which maybe is a good thing or not. I don't know. But Saquon Barkley having a matchup against this Raiders defense that has allowed just explosive play after explosive play to opposing running backs. 4th most fantasy points in the league to opposing running backs. Like I think Saquon Barkley might actually eat the Raiders defense alive if Daniel Jones can play well enough to just keep them in the game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues as well, right? Is Daniel Jones kind of dealing with that behind that offensive line, which has been so bad. And Daniel Jones has not been good under pressure at all. He has a 29.2 passing grade when pressured this year, which ranks 34th among 36 qualifying quarterbacks. He's thrown 3 interceptions, 0 touchdowns when pressured, 5 turnover worthy plays, 0 big time throws when pressured. So I worry about this offense as a whole this week. And that's why I don't know. So I love, obviously, starting Saquon Barkley. I love him. I worry that it might be a bit of a trap just because of the game itself and just how bad this Giants offensive line has been. Like I'm starting him no matter what, but I don't know that he's like a smash play like for DFS or a top 5 play necessarily. So the Giants offensive line, 47.1 run blocking grade, is last in the league. They've generated 0.9 yards before contact. That's 28th. Raiders defensive line is the 8th best as far as run defense grade goes. So they're not like terrible, as much as they do give up plays from time to time. They can at least potentially take advantage of the matchup in the trenches here, just because the Giants offensive line has been so bad. So obviously you're starting Saquon Barkley, but I don't know. I'm not like so excited for him that he's like a locked in like top 5 running back for me this week, or like I said, for DFS options. I could be wrong there. Maybe this is my hot take for the week. Basically, I don't know.
that might be a good hot take. So I think we have Darren Waller, who's out with a hamstring injury right now for the New York Giants. So like I think if nothing else, like obviously the Giants offensive line, I don't think you can count on them. Like you said, maybe for as bad as the Raiders have been against the run, maybe the Giants have been that much worse in terms of their run blocking. So that might even out a little bit. But we might see Saquon Barkley here really heavily involved as a receiver, just given the absence of Darren Waller. I think they're going to need to get the ball to somebody. They haven't really found the guy to this point. Yeah. So, this might be a interesting spot to continue to feed Saquon Barkley touches. It might not come in the form of 36 rush attempts like it did last week. But I could see this being, another game. He's had 2 receiving touchdowns so far in the year. I think on the back of some of that, need just to figure out a way to quote unquote run the ball. Like sometimes when your offensive line can't block, that's like the best way to do it. We've seen the Buccaneers do that kind of all season long with Rachaad White. Like these sort of dump off passes are more effective than actually running the ball. And that's, I think, sort of the workaround that we might see from the Giants here, especially given the absence of Darren Waller. But I mean, we've seen Saquon Barkley average more than 4 yards per rush attempt just once this year. So like, you're not going to expect, I think, an efficient day, but I think we can expect a big day. And so I'm eager to see where your bold take, how bold you're willing to go.
Yeah. And maybe I'll say it like more for not non-PPR leagues, right?
You can't back off. You can't back off now. No.
Okay. All right, fair. All right. Yeah, and then the rest of the Giants offense, I have pretty much zero confidence in, especially after seeing what that wide receiver core did last week. They did absolutely nothing, and I know it was Danny DeVito or whatever, Tommy DeVito at quarterback there for the Giants for a lot of the game, but yeah, not excited about the Giants wide receiving options. So trying to avoid them this week until somebody emerges. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles. Should be a good matchup. This is a couple good defenses here as well, but there are some potential matchups to take advantage of. Like you said earlier in the show, the Eagles are giving up the most points to wide receivers. So obviously love that for CeeDee Lamb. He's not being benched by anybody. So any interest in like a Brandon Cooks maybe for this week against the Eagles? I know, he's had a score here and there. Would he be a deeper play for you this week?
Yes, I really like Brandon Cooks this week. Like this has been a perfect matchup for opposing wide receivers. Obviously as strong as the Dallas Cowboys defense has been, like this is still a high powered Eagles offense that is going to necessitate that they keep throwing the ball. The Eagles just defensive line, not going to be conducive to any sort of efficiency in terms of the run game. This just kind of screams, throw the ball. And that's what teams have been doing against because they haven't been able to establish the run against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. So really like just the overall potential for game script to be, very much in favor here for Brandon Cooks. The Eagles allowing the most fantasy points in the league to opposing wide receivers. Brandon Cooks, he's on a 2-game touchdown streak. Maybe we make that 3. Target share has been, pretty consistent to this point. And I like this matchup. And, over the last 3 games that Dak Prescott has played against the Eagles, there have been a lot of points scored, and Dak Prescott has been actually pretty efficient, averaging like 290 yards per game against the Philadelphia Eagles in their last 3 meetings. This is one of those instances that I could picture this being, one of those surprisingly high scoring games, despite the fact that these are 2 good defenses. And that's going to translate to me starting Brandon Cooks in several lineups.
Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. And Jake Ferguson as well. He's been excellent. So I'm plugging him into lineups. I think Nate has him actually as tight end 6 as well this week. So Ferguson's another guy that we can definitely start. And Dak Prescott, absolutely. So on the Eagles side of things, Dallas defense, again, super strong, but it's not stopping you from starting Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, DeAndre Swift. The one player that is interesting, obviously, Devontae Smith. He's managed just 0.32 fantasy points per route run against man coverage, which ranks 58th, and he's managed just a 53.5 receiving grade against man coverage, which ranks 56th. And Dallas is one of the most man heavy defenses in the league, and they are very good at running man defense as well. So I do have at least, again, tempered expectations for Devontae Smith this week. How do you feel about Devontae?
Tempering expectations. And again, this has sort of been like the point of volatility this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it going to be a Devonta Smith game? Is it going to be a Dallas Goedert game? I could picture this being a little bit more of a Dallas Goedert game. But you've said it in the past when I've had questions about Devonta Smith. His upside's too high, I think, to really sit him in good conscience. Two of his best games this season have come against some of the league's worst passing defenses. Week 1 up against the Washington Commanders, which, as we said in this podcast, like hemorrhaging fantasy points to wide receivers. Again, last week or this week, I'm getting my weeks mixed up. Last week was against the Commanders, hemorrhaging fantasy points to wide receivers. Week 2 up against the Vikings, which again, like not a matchup you're going to be nervous about whatsoever in terms of your fantasy production. So like, I think we've seen a trend like up against some of the tougher defenses. We've seen some of those lapses there for Devonta Smith. So, I mean, definitely AJ Brown, you light him up, no questions asked, but not as high on Devonta Smith here heading into week 9.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much where I'm at as well. Like I almost have to start him, but it's like low end kind of wide receiver too. You're just basically hoping for some upside there. But yeah, he has struggled against some of the better defenses, right? So, and especially with the AJ Brown show going on right now, he is in the midst of a historic run. So we'll see if that continues this week. It should be interesting against the Cowboys. Let's go to the Buffalo Bills at the Cincinnati Bengals Sunday Night Football. This should be a very good game. I would hope. So let's start with the Bengals side of things. So the Bills are giving up the 31st most points to quarterbacks. Joe Burrow's been good though recently. Like he's looked healthier at least, and he's moving around the pocket a little bit more. That is at least encouraging for me. And I'm still starting Joe Burrow this week. I know it was a really rough start to the year, but have you been feeling better about Joe Burrow at least in the last few weeks?
Yeah, he's very much passing the eye test. Like he very much looks healthier. T. Higgins looks healthier. Like I think we're really starting to see this entire offense just kind of come in stride. Over the last 3 weeks, we've seen a lot of production from Joe Burrow. We've seen 8 total passing touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, and it's not necessarily been like shootout matchups that you would expect either. Like, dropping 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions against the 49ers, who obviously are on a bit of a skid, but like this is not an easy defense. So like you love to see that. I just think he's looked so much more comfortable. Posted finally, some production as a rusher last week. Got another 43 yards on the ground. I think you start Joe Burrow, you start Jamar Chase, you start T. Higgins, and you just kind of keep rolling. I think, Joe Mixon, good play. I think this is a spot where I'm kind of starting all of my Cincinnati Bengals, even if it's not necessarily like on paper a great matchup for Joe Burrow. I think this should be a matchup conducive to scoring. You start these guys, and to that point, I think the Buffalo Bills kind of the same thing, right? You start Josh Allen. Sounds like he's fully good to go, managing a shoulder injury, but practice in full here as of Thursday. He should be fine. You're starting Gabe Davis, you're starting Stephon Diggs, you're starting Dalton Kincaid, who could have a feast of a day up against this Bengals defense, allowing the most fantasy points in the league to opposing tight ends. The biggest question, I think, and really one of the only questions I have about this matchup from a fantasy perspective, is what do we do with the Buffalo Bills running backs? They brought in Leonard Fournette, signed him to the practice squad. Remains to be seen if he's going to be elevated here, but you have James Cook, a very talented former 2nd round pick on your roster. Very explosive. Feels like every time he touches the ball, it goes somewhere for 10 yards. Doesn't matter. But you still find a way. Like if you can find a way to get Latavius Murray on the field, you just got to do it. What is going on? And can you trust James Cook in the lineup? Now, granted, he doesn't need a ton of touches to be fantasy relevant because he's so efficient, but it just feels like red flag after red flag to me that this Buffalo Bills coaching staff doesn't seem to trust him in these very, like these short yardage, high value carry situations. Every time they're around the end zone, the red zone, in comes Latavius Murray, which, as explosive as Cook is, that limits your upside for fantasy.
Yeah, and it's telling, right? Like how like NFL coaches feel about like player size and stuff like that too. Like, coming in under 200 pounds and stuff like that. It doesn't matter like how explosive they feel they are. They worried about them, being effective at the goal line. And we did see him get a rushing touchdown this year. I know it was a struggle for him to kind of get in there and cross the goal line when he got it, but he did get at least an opportunity, and he capitalized. But that was his one rushing touchdown this year, one receiving touchdown. But I think I'm okay with starting James Cook again this week, even though the team brought in Lenny. Fournette's not scaring me from starting him at least one more time here until we see what that usage looks like, assuming he plays on the main roster this week, and obviously Latavius Murray in the mix. But Cook has been good. Like you said, he's been explosive, 11th in yards per carry, 11th in PFF rushing grade as well, 79.9 there. So I'm okay with him as my RB2 this week. In probably mid-range RB2. So I'd be okay firing him up this week in a good matchup here. Not amazing matchup, but a perfectly fine matchup.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to put it. And again, like, I'm not saying that James Cook needs 20 plus carries to be a viable fantasy asset, because he's explosive enough that, there's room for other running backs in this field, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want him to get a little bit more work, and I want it to be closer to the end zone. And I want them to trust him with that. And while I don't love the kind of subtle hints that they're giving towards like not trusting James Cook, just from a vibes perspective, not a good situation, but fine matchup here. And again, this should be a game that allows them to get some points on the board. I would love to see a little bit of a shootout here, which, I don't know, get James Cook a couple of receptions, let him take one to the house, and then we could call it a day.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. Yeah, that's not asking much, right? Like, we just ask for the simple things in life, and James Cook getting a few more touches is one of those things for sure. And yeah, enough with the Leonard Fournette, Latavius Murray stuff as well. But I think that does it for that matchup. Let's go to the Los Angeles Chargers at the New York Jets on Monday Night Football here. So this will be interesting. It is the New York Jets offense, who we know have been a frustrating watch this year, but there's been some positives here and there. And Breece Hall definitely has been one of those. 10th most running backs to running, or 10th most fantasy points to running backs the Chargers are allowing. So Breece Hall is a potential top 5 play here this week, I would think, considering, his involvement, his explosiveness, and how good he's looked. But how do you feel about Garrett Wilson? Because we keep kind of coming back to him. It's more, I think, to do with the trust in Zach Wilson, but the Chargers are giving up the 3rd most points to wide receivers. It's a good matchup for Garrett Wilson. Do you think he can crack that top 12 wide receivers, I guess, this week for PPR purposes?
I think he can. And like that really stems from like the target volume, right? You're looking at this matchup, and what Zach Wilson has done a good job of is targeting his best player. So that you love to see that. Starting in week 4 is when we really started to see this come on. 14 targets, 7 targets, 12 targets, 13 targets. Like, you love to see that target share, because you know that these aren't necessarily going to be the most efficient targets from Zach Wilson. So you're going to need a little bit extra volume, a little bit of extra love to make that worth your while in fantasy. You scored 17 fantasy points in each of the last 2 weeks on the back of, that increased target share. He's had 190 receiving yards over the last 2 weeks, hasn't scored a touchdown since week 2. But again, this is kind of a matchup that like should be a dream, right? And should be a conducive one to scoring fantasy points. He's obviously getting the targets. Now, just played the Eagles in week 6, who were just saying allowing a league high almost 40 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. Like I posted 17 fantasy points in that game. I think we could probably expect a very similar outing to what we saw from the Eagles up against the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel pretty comfortable about Garrett Wilson, the way things have been going lately. So I'm fine with him. Definitely fine with Breece Hall. The rest, I don't know so much. I'm probably not playing the rest of them, including Zach Wilson. I don't care that the Chargers have given up the most points to quarterbacks. If anything, that just makes me feel okay about Garrett Wilson more so than Zach Wilson. So let's talk about the Chargers side of things here. And I mean, okay about starting Justin Herbert inside of the top 10 quarterbacks or so, Austin Eckler as well, Keenan Allen for sure. But the Jets are the best at limiting points, fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So 32nd most points to wide receivers. It's not going to stop you from starting Keenan Allen, but Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnston, if one of those guys has to go, they are going to be ones that I'll be avoiding this week, going against DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, who have been a very good cornerback duo for the Jets. How about you?
They've been a great cornerback duo, and the best wide receiver performances we've seen this season have come when one or the other was out. You had DJ Reed miss 2 games for a concussion. You had Sauce Gardner miss one himself, also with a concussion. The best performances we've seen all year have been when they have not been on the field. They are going to be on the field, so I'm not getting cute with anybody other than my Keenan Allen. Justin Herbert, you're starting. I don't love the matchup for him. He's coming off a great game. I think he looks like he's getting a little bit healthier, a little bit more comfortable following that finger injury. But all in all, it's not a great matchup. This is a great secondary. I would argue probably the best cornerback tandem in the league right now. And, like DJ Reed, maybe, obviously we all appreciate Sauce Gardner, but DJ Reed, probably the more underrated asset of this group. I don't love this matchup in terms of efficiency, but yeah, you're starting the Chargers that you're starting, and you're not getting cute with anybody else.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And on that note, that is going to wrap up our week 9 preview. Thank you, everybody so much for listening. Thank you to you as well, Kate. I really do appreciate your time and going through this big slate of games with me. I know we had 4 teams on a bye, but we were able to spend a little bit more time on some of the teams that were playing this week. So I appreciate you doing that. And before we go, please let everybody know what else you have up on pff.com this week as well.
Yeah, I've got our week 8 breakdowns from my Panic or Antic column and the rushing report. And then also tomorrow, Friday, we'll be dropping 5 in case of emergency waiver wire ads. We might have talked about a couple of them here in today's show. So be on the lookout for that. List out some rostership percentages, but some options if you find yourself in a pinch between the bye weeks and some of these brutal injuries we've had as of late. I got you covered.
Nice. Like that. And yeah, as for me, we got the IDP fantasy report up on the website right now, IDP rankings. The wide receiver man and zone coverage report is up on there as well. And the offensive line, defensive line matchup article is going to be out on Friday morning from me, but that's going to do it. Good luck in week 9. Enjoy Steelers Titans tonight, and good luck to everybody. And until next time, peace out.